Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why you just can't stop thinking about someone? Maybe it's that person you just met, or someone you've known for years. You catch yourself replaying conversations, imagining new ones, feeling an ache deep inside, an ache that won't go away. It's like they've taken up permanent residence in your mind. But why? Is this love, obsession, fate, or is it something deeper? C.S. Lewis, one of the greatest Christian thinkers of the modern era, once said, "The heart never takes the place of the head, but it can and should obey it." In his book, The Four Loves, Lewis explains that the longing we feel, the way one person's presence or even their absence consumes our thoughts, isn't just about romance. It's about something far more profound. But before we dive into this revelation, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and affirm your journey by commenting, "Lord, I surrender my heart to you." This isn't just a small action. It's a step toward unlocking a truth that could completely shift how you understand love, longing, and the purpose behind it all. And trust me, you need to stay until the end, because what we're about to reveal might hold the key to the peace your heart has been searching for. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man named Daniel. He was a committed Christian, strong in his faith, confident in God's plan for his life. But then he met her, Grace. She was kind, beautiful, and had a way of making him feel seen like no one else ever had. At first, it was simple admiration, but soon his thoughts became hers. Every verse he read, every prayer he prayed, she was there, in his mind, in his heart. It wasn't just attraction, it felt like need. If she didn't text back, his heart ached. If she smiled at someone else, he felt jealous. And worst of all, the more he thought about her, the less he thought about God. What was happening to him? This is where Lewis gives us our first clue. He describes Eros, the love of passion and romance. It's powerful, so powerful that it can make us believe we need someone in the same way we need air to breathe. It's what makes love feel overwhelming, intoxicating. But here's the danger. When Eros is left unchecked, it demands to be our God. We see this all the time, don't we? People chasing after love like it's salvation, hoping that if this person loves them back, their life will finally make sense. But has that ever truly satisfied anyone? Even King Solomon, the wisest man in history, wrestled with this. He had wealth, wisdom, and more relationships than we can count. Yet, in Ecclesiastes 1:14, he writes, "I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind, because no human love, no matter how strong, can fill the God-shaped hole inside us." But there's another kind of love Lewis talks about, storge. This is affectionate love, the kind that forms through time, familiarity, and comfort. It's the love between family members, childhood friends, the deep sense of belonging we crave. And sometimes, when we can't stop thinking about someone, it's not because we're obsessed, it's because we're longing for something safe, something familiar. And here's the twist. Whether it's Eros or Storge, the real question isn't why we can't stop thinking about someone. The real question is, what is this longing pointing us toward? Because Lewis makes something very clear. All love, in its truest form, is meant to lead us to God. Think about it. Why do we long for love at all? Why does our soul ache when we feel distant from someone? Why do we crave that deep connection? It's because we were made for it. Not just human love, but divine love. A love that doesn't leave, doesn't disappoint, doesn't fade with time. Psalm 42:1 says, "As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God." What if the reason you can't stop thinking about that person isn't because they're your destiny, but because your soul is trying to remind you of the one you were made for? And this is where we must be careful, because love, when misunderstood, can become a trap. It can lead us into idolatry, making a person our source of joy instead of God. So let's pause here for a moment. Have you ever found yourself in this place, longing for someone so deeply that it pulls you away from your faith instead of drawing you closer to it? If you relate to this, type "I choose God's love first" in the comments. Let's declare together that no earthly love will ever replace the love of our Creator, because real love, the kind that truly satisfies, isn't about possession. It's about reflection. Every love we experience should reflect the love of God, not replace it. But how do we transform this longing? How do we take this obsession and turn it into something that actually leads us closer to God instead of further away? When Daniel realized how much his thoughts revolved around grace, he did what most of us would do. He tried to fight it. He prayed harder, distracted himself, even avoided seeing her, hoping that distance would make his feelings disappear. But it didn't work. If anything, the longing grew stronger, and that's when frustration set in. "God," he cried out one night, "why would you let me feel this way if I'm supposed to focus on you?" But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question isn't why we feel this way, but what we're meant to do with these feelings. C.S. Lewis offers us a profound insight here. He explains that love, in all its forms, is never wrong, but how we handle it determines whether it draws us closer to God or leads us away from Him. Love can be a light guiding us to Christ, or a weight pulling us into idolatry. And idolatry, at its core, is when we take something good, something beautiful, and place it above God. It's when we say, "If I have this, I'll be happy. If I lose this, I'll be empty." Haven't we all done this in some way? But here's the truth. No human was ever designed to carry the weight of being our everything. That's why relationships fail under the pressure of unrealistic expectations. That's why people disappoint us, no matter how much we love them. Even the greatest love stories on earth will one day end, but the love of God, it never does. That's why 1 John 4:19 says, "We love because He first loved us." Every love we experience is meant to be a reflection of His love, not a replacement for it. So what was Daniel supposed to do? Ignore his feelings? Pretend they didn't exist? No, Lewis teaches us something radical. Instead of erasing love, we're called to transform it. This is where most people get stuck. They think they have two options: either indulge their feelings without limits or suppress them completely. But Lewis presents a third way: to take the love we feel and offer it back to God. This changes everything. Imagine taking that deep longing, the thoughts that consume you, the emotions that overwhelm you, and instead of letting them control you, you place them in God's hands. It's what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. In Luke 22:42, He prays, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." That's surrender. This is where transformation happens, when love stops being about possession and starts being about offering. When we stop asking, "How can this person fulfill me?" and start asking, "How can this love bring me closer to God?" So Daniel made a decision. Instead of fighting his emotions, he surrendered them. He stopped seeing grace as the answer to his happiness and started seeing her as someone he could love through God, not instead of God. His prayers changed. Instead of, "God, take these feelings away," he prayed, "God, purify these feelings. Teach me to love her in a way that honors you." Instead of, "Why can't I stop thinking about her?" he prayed, What are you trying to teach me through this longing? And slowly, the weight lifted. The obsession faded, not because his feelings disappeared, but because they were transformed. Because here's the secret. When we give our love to God, He gives it back to us in a way that's purer, stronger, and more beautiful than before. But this takes trust. It takes faith to believe that God knows what to do with our hearts better than we do. And that's why I want to challenge you today. Are you willing to surrender this longing to God? Are you willing to trust that He knows what's best for your heart, even when you don't? If you are, type, "Lord, I surrender my heart to you," in the comments. Let's declare this together, because when we lay down our desires before Him, He replaces them with something even greater, peace. And isn't that what we're all really searching for? But surrendering our feelings is only the first step. There's still one final lesson that Lewis teaches us about love, a lesson that could change the way we see relationships forever. There's a moment in every love story, whether romantic or not, when we realize that love isn't just about what we feel, it's about what we choose. And that's where so many of us get stuck. We assume that because our hearts feel something so deeply, it must mean something, that we're meant to be with this person, that this longing has to be fulfilled. But what if the longing itself is the point? C.S. Lewis reveals something profound in The Four Loves. He explains that human love, no matter how beautiful, will always be incomplete on its own. Even the purest love, when not rooted in God, will eventually crumble, because we weren't just made for human love, we were made for divine love. And this is where we meet the highest, most powerful form of love, agape. Unlike Eros, which is driven by passion, or Storge, which is rooted in familiarity, agape is selfless. It's the love that gives, expecting nothing in return. The love that chooses to serve rather than demand. It's the love that Christ showed us when He laid down His life for us on the cross. And here's where everything changes. When we stop looking for love to fill us and start looking for love to transform us. When we stop asking, "How can this person complete me?" and start asking, "How can I reflect God's love to this person?" That's when love becomes freeing instead of binding. That's when Daniel finally understood. Grace was never meant to be the answer to his heart's longing, and his love for her wasn't wrong. It was just incomplete. So he did something radical. Instead of obsessing over what he wanted from her, he started praying for what God wanted for her. Instead of asking, "Does she love me back?" he asked, "How can I love her with a pure heart, even if she never loves me in return?" And when he shifted his focus from receiving love to giving love, he found something unexpected: peace. Because agape doesn't cling, it doesn't demand, it doesn't need constant validation, it simply gives. And that's the kind of love Jesus calls us to. In John 13:34, he says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." Think about that. Jesus loved us first, not because we were perfect, not because we could give him something in return, but because he is love itself. And when we love like that, when we surrender our desires, our longing, our obsession, we're no longer slaves to our emotions. We become free, free to love without fear, free to let go when necessary, free to trust that if God wants someone in our life, he will make a way. So if you've been struggling, if there's someone you just can't stop thinking about, maybe it's time to ask, what if this longing isn't about them? What if it's about God calling me deeper into his love? Because that is the love that never fades, never disappoints, never leaves. And when we seek that love first, everything else falls into place. If this message spoke to you, I want you to declare it in the comments. Type, "God's love is enough for me." Let's fill this space with a reminder that no matter who comes or goes in our lives, His love remains. And if you know someone who's struggling with this same battle, share this with them, because sometimes all we need is a reminder that the love we've been searching for was already ours all along. This next video is handpicked just for you. YouTube knows you'll love it, or dive into this C.S. Lewis playlist for even deeper wisdom. And hey, don't leave without subscribing. Your journey has just begun.